Good, Mr. Hudson, how are you? You good?
Yeah. Looking forward to the Winter World Cup.
Yeah, aren't we all? Topics of the week. We are going to be talking. I always want Alan Hudson's view and opinion on everything. And topics of the week, we're going to be looking at injured players because the World Cup, as you've alluded to, is in the winter. But first, I want to talk about not my flying cat, because this cat flies. I've got a kitten. It's the fastest thing on four legs, Al. You know, and they say wingers could catch pigeons. This little kitten could catch absolutely anything. But
we had a goalkeeper like that at Chelsea, mate. He
you
could catch
did, yeah, of
everything.
course you did, Catty. So,
Yeah.
I mean, what a goalkeeper he was, and
It
again,
might be him. It might come back. It might come back reincarnation, mate.
well, I tell you what, the way he jumps from settee to settee, and he almost goes up and smashes that ball out the top corner, could well be Catty.
There you go. From one blue to another.
Absolutely. But the World Cup, the sexualised, the monitorised, and the hypocritical World Cup this appears to be. What's your take on it, Al? Because it is quite ridiculous, and it was awarded to Qatar somewhat 12 years ago. They gave the 2018 to Russia and the 2022 to Qatar at the time, if my memory serves me right. But again, what's your take?
Well, I think very much along the lines of most people, but I know we're going to go on to injured players and all that, so I know what that's all about. I know how they'll be feeling, but my first thought about that is to really can answer the first question as well. Is that if it was me and I missed the Qatar World Cup, I wouldn't be anywhere near as disappointed as missing the one in Mexico. Because they're a great footballing nation. It's a great place to go and play football. Very hot, my kind of conditions, although I like it better underfoot. But I think I'd get away with it. But Qatar is a no for me. I've been over that part of the world several times. Don't like it. I don't. I think. Apart from we've already mentioned the greed that's ruined our game. You know, the root of all evil is money, and it's absolutely. I mean, if we're both and many other people will prove wrong and it's a complete success, then I think I'll stop drinking. But this doesn't seem like it's gonna. Yeah, I think it's gonna be a total disaster from start to finish. I don't like anything about it. I don't like the only thing decent about it really is the times of the games, and I don't really know if I'll be too interested about watching most of them.
Yeah, I know England's first game's at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I shan't be watching that. That's on a Monday. I believe the next game against Anthony in America is 7 o'clock our time on the Friday night. And then I believe the next game against Wales is a Tuesday night, again, same time at 7 o'clock. But let's actually go back and break it down. Let's go back to Qatar. How does a World Cup get awarded to a state like Qatar that, to all intents and purposes, have never really played the game? Nobody had really ever heard of it. And the only thing that we ever think when you say Qatar is a complaint round about the throat and the nasal and a bit of mucus. So we've not even heard of Qatar. Where the hell did it come from?
Well, I was thinking more of Elvis Presley, to tell the truth.
Guitar.
But, it's the most unlikely place to have a World Cup, especially. It's been bad enough having it in the summer, but in the winter, it's just going back. It's all about money again. The people that have earned money out of this is, the best thing is they've taken all the money, and every part of the system have taken money from the FA to FIFA. Sepp Blatter, Platini, all them. They've all took the money and gone on the missing list. They ain't put no thought into it. They don't. They, you know, what annoys me about football, and not, is as a player you get on with it. But my treatment from football clubs in the game was abysmal with every club I've been at. You know, but they give absolutely no thought for the football supporter or who travels the world and watches these matches, and it costs them a lot of money, especially today. It's after what we've been through. They're gonna screw the life out of them and get every penny out of them they can, and all to watch which should be the best spectacle of all time. Every 4 years is our old mate George Best used to be broken-hearted every 4 years because he was Irish and couldn't make the World Cup. This is a stage that should be the dream of everybody's dreams, and yeah, I'm afraid this one won't be a dream. It's going to be the complete opposite. I think it'll be a total nightmare.
Absolutely. And when we're looking at spreading the game around the world, and this is what FIFA have always maintained. Yeah, right, okay, we don't buy that. But I don't think anybody could have an argument that traditionally the World Cup's always been in South America and then in Europe, and there's a lot of emerging African nations, Egypt being one, Morocco and Tunisia and places like that. Turkey in the Middle East, another nation that's come on leaps and bounds over the last generation or two. So there is an argument that football should be spread more evenly to other areas. And I think that's why they want one every 2 years rather than every 4 years, if I'm just, playing devil's advocate a bit here. But if the game had been awarded, or the games, the World Cup, would have been awarded to, say, for instance, Saudi Arabia, who have had a reputation and a history of playing football, do you think it would have had the same effect on the monetarized and the sexualized and the hypocrisy of the World Cup that really is stamped upon the Qatar World Cup?
Well, I think we're living in a world now where the people that run the game and run football in general, we're seeing it at our local clubs as well. Chelsea, nobody knows what's going on at Chelsea. Just fellas, I thought the Americans who have now, from the time I played in Seattle right up until now, and you mentioned Anthony's, that's where he learned his trade, and he's involved in the World Cup. I thought the Americans would be very much along the lines of thinking the way we do. And he doesn't. Bowley, who's bought Chelsea, it's still a bit. Everything seems to be a mystery. What happened when they were all vying for the World Cup? That was a mystery.
Yeah.
It wasn't until the Platini and Blatter were caught out, and I'm not talking about a million here and a million there. We're talking millions here.
Yeah.
It's a kind of. I'm just surprised that Ken Bates ain't involved with it. It's one of those. It's like watching a TV mystery movie where they give you a load of names and you got to guess, who's involved in it and who's behind it, because it's a mystery. It's sinister. It's everything about it, and then obviously they brought up the latest one, which we spoke about, the sober tent. That kind of put the top on the pot really, with the sober tent. They're going to put drunken supporters in a sober tent now. Well, what's inside that sober tent, we ask ourselves. That's another mystery. How do they keep coming up with these new things that you think, well, what the hell's that? But the thing is, you ain't going to find out till you get there.
Yeah.
And nobody knows what's going on until they actually get off that aeroplane, and I had someone offer me flights the other day from Dubai to Qatar for $2,500, and it's a 50-minute flight. And he said, you do get a couple of glasses of champagne, Well, I got more glasses of champagne in my fridge than they got on that flight. I can tell you. But it's everything about it, the whole element, everything surrounding it. And obviously we'll go on to the injuries, but even right down to the most important part, the players. You know, I really, I look at it and you know, it broke my heart when I missed the World Cup. I've never really got over it, and because that was when I mean, and I'm not exaggerating. I'm not saying. I'm sure other people missed it and feel the same way. But we're all different. Uh, I missed it through injury, and I miss what in our lifetime I think was the greatest World Cup of all time. I think 1970 was the greatest World Cup of all time. It was with the best team with it was kind of historic as well with Pele and the great forward line. The way they got the fourth goal, the way to anyone to beat the Italians 4-1 in a final is quite extraordinary. They never conceded 4 goals. England, kind of rose to the occasion. As reigning world champions, I thought they were better in 1970 than they were in '66. That was quite memorable. Then you had all the mistakes Alf Ramsey made, by pulling Bobby Charlton off, and everything about that World Cup was, then bringing Jeff Astle on in front of Peter Osgood, who was the best centre forward in Europe, if not the world at that time. It had so much about it. But the only other ones that people would say, well, they say no, that was the other one was the World Cup, was the hand of God.
Yeah.
But I don't think I don't think we'll be talking about this World Cup. I won't be in years to come because I'm 71 now. But it won't be. I don't think. I think it'll be memorable for all the wrong reasons.
I've never asked you this before, but it's a question that I've thought about. What hurt and annoyed and frustrated you the most? Getting the injury that prevented you from playing in the World Cup, and had England got to the final, would have been on your 19th birthday, you would have made history without any fear of doubt. Or the fact that in 1974 England didn't qualify because you were banned. What annoyed and hurt you the most, Al? And then obviously in '78 England didn't qualify again. So in an era, for me, the greatest decade of football players that we've ever had, England messed it up and then didn't qualify until 1982. So what actually hurts and wrangles with you most?
Well, I think a player will always tell you like it's probably
Mm.
like a marriage breakup or whatever. If you're in love with someone or whatever, and you're so much in love with the game, and you're a kid, you grow up, and I'm sure most players as kids, the dream as a kid was always to play in an FA Cup final. You never dreamt of playing for your country. That was just a whim. It's a case of our thing. Um, then, my first season was, I went from a bit part player to one of our main players in a short space of time, 6-7 months. We had world class players in our team like Peter Osgood, Charlie Cook, Pete Bonetti. Eddie McCready was always in the World 11 when it was peak. So, that was a big season for me. And I always say, like, when I missed the game against Leeds was, a little kid. I would never forget being around my grandmother's as a kid, and at Christmas they were having a drink before Christmas, and the tree was up and everything. The lights were dimmed, and it was like the old days were, unlike today. Christmas was exciting. This was what this Christmas, this November, December should be about. It's not about football. I always say it's like peeping through the door and seeing all your presents under the tree, and your mum or dad says you go back to bed, you can't open them till the morning, and you wake up in the morning and there's nothing there,
Yeah.
and you're broken hearted, and there's nothing for you, and it's empty, you feel empty, and that's what happened with me with the Leeds final, and that carried me into when I went down the hole at West Brom. I kind of knew that there was no way I was going to make Wembley up. I mean, my ankle was shattered, and not like a hamstring or anything like that or a muscle. It was my ligaments. I knew what I'd done, and but the last thing on my mind was Mexico. Because I was so looking for the FA Cup, but to miss Mexico was. I remember where I watched it. I remember where I watched England play Brazil, around my friend's house. I remember us going out for the day and then coming back and watch it. So it was such an occasion. Um, and then, as you say, I got banned, and it was like someone had a dough on me, was sticking pins in it.
Mm.
It was where's this going to end? What have I got banned for? Why have you banned me? I've got an injury. I've been injured. It was kind of the most obvious case of an injury of all time, I would imagine.
Yeah.
To miss two FA Cup finals and a World Cup with an injury, and then Alf Ramsey say banned you for not wanting to go on tour is the most. This case I got against the FA. It would be in America. I would probably be awarded about $100 million and they'd be thrown out. Whatever.
Mm.
It was ludicrous. And as you just said, to not to go from 1966 world champions and all the hullabaloo that as fans do, they get excited. We're the best team in the world. Over East London, they said West Ham won the World Cup, because they had more beers than hers, and that's still going on with the Oldens. They still drink to that every Sunday. Poor fellas. Uh, as you say, I was playing the best football of my life at Stoke City in 1974, 75, and yet I was still internationally banned.
Yeah.
And you've got players getting picked for the team who really shouldn't have been there. That's why we didn't qualify.
Mm.
That's why, I speak to my friends like Tony Curry all the time. Even Stevie Perriman, Stevie Perriman was overlooked.
Yeah.
But then you had the real great players. The World Cup it is the stage. They called Old Trafford the Theatre of Dreams. Well, the World Cup should be the Theatre of Dreams. It's where every kid's dream comes true. It's where when we switch on a game every 4 years, we want to see the world's best players. And that was what crushed, going back to George, that's what crushed him. And his drinking got out of control around that time because he had to disappear into the background. And I know how he felt because I was treated like that. But he was like that because he was born Irish. And now you got all these teams from I don't know, the back streets of African countries are in it, and because George was Northern Irish and they only had him and Pat Jennings and 9 others, they couldn't qualify, and it just didn't make up. But that was how heartbreaking it was for George, and for England not to qualify throughout the 70s, I really and truly think that the FA should have been closed down and we should have started all over again, because that was when, to go from world champions to not qualify for 10 long years, it just about sums them up.
It certainly does. It's unbelievable. You did mention, and you've spoken about injured players. There's going to be a lot of players that are injured because it's in November. They've
Yes.
always said in the past that England have got more of a chance to win the World Cup if we're playing it in the middle of the season, if we have a mid-season break and play the World Cup, rather than at the end of the season, the players are tired and then they're off to the World Cup after a season. they kind of want the cake and eat it, and you can't. If you have it in November and then a player you're playing domestic league football and they play Champions League football, and my opinion is two leagues don't sit into one. You play European Cup competitions, you don't play a league in the same season as you're playing your domestic league. So there's a lot of football that's been played. You're going to get injured players. So they've been mooted, and it's been mooted, and they've been crowing about they want it when the players are fit and they're healthy and they're still hungry. And this is what happens. So there's no real ideal time for England. It's always really been excuses, 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 and they've always picked the wrong players.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't really. I was thinking last night after our brief chat yesterday. I don't know how they got on in Germany, Spain, Italy, France.
Absolutely.
How their leagues it affects their league, but I know it's absolutely crushed the Premier League for this season. It's absolutely tore it to shreds. However, whatever, I've been listening over the last couple of days. Frank Lampard yesterday was saying about, we've got to get a couple of good results before we go into the World Cup, and it's almost like you're watching a silly made-up movie that you got to win the two league games before you go to the World Cup, and then you got to prepare again. What are they going to be like when they come back? However long they're out there, which is another thing you got to take into consideration. I mean, say if we get knocked out of the group, what happens? Do we come back and kick off the season again, or do we wait that month? I don't know.
Still wait a month.
Well, it just don't make any sense, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Nothing about this World Cup makes any sense. The people that have organised it know nothing about football. They only know about one thing, and that's their bank balance. And it's unbelievable that they let Blatter get away with it. And they waited till it was all organised and all settled, all had got their money before they did anything about it with Blatter and Platini. It's just, it's like letting Ted Bundy run loose and kill as many people as he can before they arrest him. It just doesn't add up. It's 2 weeks. We're closing in 2 weeks now to the World Cup, and it's just doesn't seem feasible. You look out your window and you see it pouring the rain, and you think this is not World Cup season. It's everything about it. And. I don't. They're so bold. These people that have earned money out of it. I mean, they can. Will they sit round after the World Cup at Christmas and explain to their grandchildren? But they were the people that ruined the World Cup. I don't think it's. I don't think. I think the talking point over Christmas will be about the ruination of the World Cup, whereas it should be talking about all the good things that's gone on in the year.
I think that's a great point you make, Alan. FIFA have actually come out, Gianni Infantino has come out with a statement that let's not talk about the protests, etc. Let's focus on the football. I think he's absolutely spot on there. Now isn't the time to protest. They've been awarded this 12 years ago. If you've got any problems, you should have made it common knowledge back then. It's pointless going on about it now. There's a lot of people in the media and the football media that have made themselves very vocal about the World Cup being in Qatar, and they don't like it. It shouldn't have been awarded to Qatar. The human rights issues, etc., etc. It's an absolute disgrace. And where are they going to be in November? They're going to be in Qatar taking the Arab money. Absolute hypocrisy. Stinks.
Absolutely, and it's because they're planting money into our game and all around the world. They got so much money, it's incredible. But it's almost as if football has become, part of a game of Monopoly.
Yes.
It's like getting a Monopoly board out, and you move this and that, and people are throwing millions of pounds across the board, and it's Monopoly money. It's ridiculous. It's meaningless money. It's worthless money because it's dirty money. It's no good. It's football is. I'm afraid, I remember being at Stoke and when football was great, and in my lifetime, me personally, football, playing under a manager like Tony Waddington was everything revolved around football.
Yeah.
Whether it was having a drink, whether it was having lunch, whether it was having dinner. Your focal point was football. It was all about football. Even though I was out drinking with my boss, I always, in the back of my mind, had Saturday on my mind and thought, if I have one more drink, I've got to play at my best on Saturday, because I can't be doing this and not putting on a performance. And that kind of inspired me, really. He was such an inspiration, because he said, look, football will always win. Football will always win. Well, football is the most important thing, especially, it was in his life. He was a Busby babe. He was at Manchester United. He went through the war and everything else. He come out the other end. He knew Busby well. Look at what Matt Busby went through in his life with the Munich air crash. It was, but everything that happened. Busby being in hospital in Munich. What got him through that was a game of football.
Yeah.
It got him into it, but it got him out of it. But I always say that I wouldn't have got on the aeroplane, and I don't think I would have. I mean, as crackers up, but that's another thing. But at the end of the day, everything boils down to football. My old man used to go to work and work all the hours that God sent. He never went down the pub after, like everybody else did in Chelsea and Fulham and everywhere else. Everything revolved around football, and football was it in our. My mother said my mum crazy, really, in the end, just hearing about football, because that was it, and weekends were all about football. It's like. The next step will be there'll be no football at weekends. We'll have it on Tuesday and Wednesday, and weekends everybody will be around twiddling their thumbs. This is what the World Cup in the winter is effectively sad. It's going to make it seem like we can do anything we want for the pound note. We can do it. We can move. This Monday Night Football, which we copied off the Americans, and we only copied off everything off the Americans. Monday Night Football has become a huge success. There'll be no more Monday Night Football, where we won't have Friday games on a Friday. We won't have games on a Saturday. We won't have games on a Sunday. We won't have games on a Monday. We'll play them all midweek. And so you can all enjoy your weekends. Well, what are we going to do? We don't all go to church, do we? We all don't go out. What's going on? What is the next trick they got for us? The mind boggles. I mean, I've got a strange way of looking at things, I know, but I'm not far wrong in saying that, they kind of got the power to do anything they want, and at the end of the day, ruin our game.
Absolutely.
And it's. I honestly, if I haven't even looked to see who's playing who in the World Cup, but my interest is as low as it's ever been on the game, because of where it is and at what time it is.
I think an awful lot of football fans would echo those views as well, Al. The protest that Infantani was talking about is all this rainbow laces, etc. And at what stage? And I don't understand this. I've had many a conversation with lots of people, and back in my day when you were playing and the Mavericks were running football, we didn't know about anybody's sexuality. It's come out recently, and I can't really put my finger on when, that you need to come out if you're a gay footballer. No, you don't. No, you don't. If you're gay, you're gay. End of. You haven't got to come out and do nothing. And all of a sudden, there's this. oh, I'm gay and I'm going to a football and you should respect me. No, I've never mentioned my sexuality. I mean, it happens that I'm not gay. I've always been straight, and I always will be. But
You're happy, you're not
yeah,
gay.
absolutely. But why does the sexuality of anybody have to be referenced in football? What the hell is all that about? They've made issues, these gay, lesbians, LGBT, what have you. Go to football, enjoy football, and keep your sexuality and politics away from it.
Well, it's we live in I've been calling it the new world for quite a while now,
Yeah,
and this is part of it. I mean, I really, I'm like you, Paul. I don't understand any of that. There's gays in football. Uh, if you took, I've got a picture of George Michael on my wall, and I
yeah,
love him. I love his music, and I
mm,
love him. Who gives a damn? Why bring these things up?
absolutely.
It's as I say, we've gone from football being the main aspect to it being the last issue.
Yeah.
It's absolutely nothing to do with the game of football now, and there's Qatar, all them countries. I don't know. Yeah, they're learning the game. They're new to the game. I don't know what the pitches are going to be like. I don't know. It's going to be. I really don't know. It's going to be. There's going to be so many laughs. It's unbelievable,
Mm,
but it'll be a laugh for all the wrong reasons. It's. But I used to. I wrote something yesterday. Looking forward to watching the Germans play, and the great Germans and the Spanish. And the. Uh, when the World Cup in France, I was supposed to go to that, and I got hit by the car the year before, and I was going to France. I went over to the opening of the stadium the year before, and I met with Pele was there, and Bogacic was there, and all the friends I played against in the NSL, and everything was exactly what we've been talking. It was all about football. And they opened the stadium that night, and that was where the final was going to be. Things happened in that World Cup which were quite strange, but it was all football
yeah.
infuriating. We never Zidane. It was all about Zidane. Um, but this is not about football. This is nothing to do with football.
Mm,
There's no build up. All we hear about in England, they're all fed up with hearing about he's injured, and
yep.
he's injured. Well, you shouldn't have the World Cup in this time of the year. It's as simple as that. It's to give players no time to that usual time at the end of the season. In England, where we've messed about with the FA Cup as well, where it used to be on the BBC and was on all day long. Well, that's
Yep.
no longer.
Mm,
That's another disgrace. We From the last day of the season as the FA Cup in our season, players had 6-8 weeks, something like that, to prepare for the World Cup. And if anybody got any knocks, any injuries, especially that was then in 1970, when really our medical teams were nowhere near like they are today. The
absolutely.
treatment in them days was disgraceful. My ankle, I'm still struggling on my ankle now,
Mm,
50 years later. I mean, if I had a medical team like the medical teams of today, I'd have been, I could have been able to play on the certain pitches. But, we're talking about 50 years ago where they had six weeks to get people fit, take them on tour, acclimatise, get used to the weather, acclimatise, cover every aspect of the game to get your best performance, which we did in Mexico. I mean, our performance in Mexico, people forget when we played Brazil in the heat of Mexico, we put up our best performance of any World Cup, I would say.
mm,
Um, and to be 2-0 up against the Germans, a good German team, and for Elf to mess all that up, You know, that was all about football. You know, memories that they'll stand in. But if someone says in 10 years' time that Harry Kane was top goal scorer in Qatar, I think it will be quite laughable.
Yeah.
It won't be like he was top goal scorer in Munich or in Madrid or whatever, you know, in the Spanish World Cup or this World in Qatar, will everyone go, where? You know, it was it just don't. It's got no ring of truth to it. It's like watching a scientific film. It's too ridiculous for words for me. It's I don't know what I'm gonna do. I've had Don Shanks on the phone from Egypt. Where are we going to watch it? We was gonna go there because my son's involved. Now we're not going to go there because it's vastly overpriced. Yep. Again, they got absolutely no respect for the supporter, for the football fan. These England fans, mate, they're fanatics. They go all over the world every 4 years. They cancel their family holidays and they go and watch their country. You know how crackers they are. You know, and you know, like the Scottish with them nutty supporters that come down. The Irish, when Ireland were getting into the World Cup with Jack Charlton, it was fantastic. It was absolutely fantastic in New York and all that. But this is just bizarre. This is that we've taken all that away from the game, you know. And then I'm afraid all them Scottish are going to be in one big sober tent. It'll be the biggest sober tent in the world.
There won't be many Scottish in the sober tent apart from the referee. There might be a few Welsh people in the sober tent. Who do you? Is there any team you fancy, Al, in the World Cup, or players that you're interested in watching?
No, my interest is zero,
Yeah,
Paul.
got you.
It's it really is. My interest is in England is zero because I think what Southgate done in the Euros, he should have been sacked, and we should have brought even someone like Eddie Howe. We should have brought someone like Eddie Howe, and look at the way he's rejuvenated Newcastle by playing football, trying to play the Eddie Howe way. But what he did in the Euros, he ruined England's chances of winning another trophy. It was there to be taken. It was like, talk about the hand of God. It was handed on a plate to us.
Yeah.
It was at Wembley. We played the worst Italian team I've ever seen. And we went 1-0 up after 3 or 4 minutes, and we still couldn't beat him. And he went defensively, and that should have been Harry Kane's golden boot year, and he pulled him off in one game when they were 2-0 up, and Harry had scored. He would have got a hatful if he stayed on because the other team was so bad. I think we won 4 in the end without him. But no. I just don't get it. All I know is I'll probably be interested in the Americans more than anything else. And I'm quite proud of my son and where he's got. At this time, he's one of the assistant coaches with the United States. And I will be focusing. My full attention will be on the United States. I haven't been an England supporter since that FA ban, so I'm certainly not going to start now. And I don't know how Qatar are going to get on in the competition. I'm sure
they'll play 3 games.
They got they probably put their youth team out, give them a bit of experience. That's how crazy this World Cup is going to be. I mean, that point you make there is unbelievable. Yeah. What you're looking forward to? Absolutely nothing, mate. I think it's a disgrace. I got a text from a friend of mine. I was in Gran Canaria with 3 years ago, and we're meeting up in Gran Canaria for the World Cup. I mean, that's what it's come to, you know. Well, let's go to a warm climate to watch these people play, because nobody the working class man can't afford to go to Qatar anyway.
No, they can't. I mean, say in the summer it'd be barbecues and it'd be beers outside and the hot weather and your factor 50, etc., etc. Now with this World Cup, it'd be a cup of cocoa and a cup of Bovril, and the government are
Well,
saying turn your electricity off when England play Wales.
absolutely, there'd be bonfires. Bonfires in the World Cup.
Oh
Unbelievable.
God, it is incredible. Anthony is going out soon, isn't he? Are the whole of the American team going to go out there and acclimatise? Because I can already see a multitude of excuses if England don't qualify.
Well, I think he's got them ready already.
Yeah.
I mean, there's one thing about Southgate. He can, he can. I don't think that way he's not making excuses. That is the way he actually does see things, and
Mm,
he believes the way England played in the Euros is the way to play the game,
yeah.
which is something else. My father would turn in his grave if I think my dad would work all through the World Cup if England were the focal team. Uh, no, it's I I'm really not interested who England's going to pick other than listening to Harry Kane talk. It's all because they want to break records and get a record amount of caps. Well, the record amount of caps don't matter today.
No.
They're meaningless,
Mm,
meaningless. I mean, David Beckham's last 25 England caps or something like that were coming on a substitute in the
yeah.
last 2 minutes so that he could be a representative of the nation and an icon and all this. And I remember my good friend Jeff Powell writing a piece about it. When Billy Wright played for England, and there was no substitutions. He got 100 caps.
Mm,
But getting an England cap is getting selected in the first place and being picked in the team,
yeah.
not coming off the bench. They should have
Absolutely.
bench caps, shouldn't they? With a like if you play for England and come off the bench, they should have a cap in the shape of a bench. Uh, well, yeah, because you haven't won a cap, that's not winning a cap.
No.
That's you win a cap through your performances, and when I played my first game against West Germany, if I had come on for the second half and played like I did for 45 minutes and had an outstanding match, I would have been real disappointed because I didn't get in the team in the first place.
Mm,
Uh, but them days are gone. When football today has become just, it's got become very Americanized as regards eight
yeah.
substitutions. And when you're watching telly and I watch a lot of championship matches and everything, whatever decent matches that come on today of great interest. And it is. And I got to try and pour another drink when I hear that's the seventh substitution.
Yeah.
They've got one more substitution. How can you have 8 subs on the bench? I don't get it.
Yeah, I think they have eight
I,
or 10, don't they? And can bring in what is it, six
unbelievable,
these days? It is crazy. You
unbelievable.
just look,
If you can't win a game of football with
yeah,
11 men, then that's beyond me. But you got these silly commentators, who don't know how lucky they are to have a job,
yeah,
say, well, yeah, because this game is all going to boil down to the bench.
mm,
Who comes off the bench?
mm,
Who uses the bench best? I mean, what's all that about? I thought they were talking about carpentry, to say the truth. It's
absolutely.
ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Our game is in a state where I wouldn't like to be a young kid growing up into this game. I'm telling you that now.
Well, it certainly wasn't one from the bench back in your day, Al. And Arsenal are playing Chelsea today, or rather, Chelsea are playing Arsenal because it's at the Bridge, isn't it? 72-73 season. You had a few battles with Arsenal at Stamford Bridge in the FA Cup quarter-finals. You drew 2-2. Osgood scored that fabulous goal. Alan Ball scored off a header from a corner, and then you went up to Highbury, got knocked out a few days later, 2-1. You had a defeat against them at Stamford Bridge, a 1-0 defeat that season as well. And I've been watching the YouTube. He actually battered Arsenal that day. I hope Chelsea never scored 4 or 5. But ultimately, if the ball don't drop in the back back of the net. Sometimes you don't get the result, and Arsenal did knock you out, and then Vic Allen, I think, scored a brace, knocked them out, and Arsenal didn't go to Wembley. Sunderland didn't beat the great Leeds United team in '73. So football is a bit
Well,
balmy.
that was wonderful. I thought that was a wonderful year. They're years you remember, and
Yeah.
it's great for the Geordies. I was out last week with a load of Geordies, Newcastle fans that come down. And they're great people. They love their football, and it's great when they can do. I mean, poor old Malcolm McDonald's played in about 8 cup finals for Newcastle. He got beaten all of them. He never won a cup
He was a
final.
Jonah, wasn't he?
He might well be referee, Malcolm, in them games. But no, I mean, then, the Sunderland game was absolutely fantastic. What it meant to Bob Soko, there's always, my mate said it the other day. I met him for a drink in the King's Road, and he went, something since Bob Soko won the World Cup, and their things are standing in your mind. I mean, that was fantastic. Great for the people of Sunderland. It put all their players on the map, Even Wimbledon beating Liverpool was great, for whatever Wimbledon were, whatever way they done it. And by the way, Don Howe was behind that.
Yes.
The great Don Howe. They wouldn't have done it without him, no doubt. But it was still an FA Cup final, and it was still played in the summer, and it was still at Wembley. It was, cup finals meant something then, and then all of a sudden the same thing happened because of money. Manchester United pulled out of it, and the competition hasn't been the same since they've had sponsors for it. It shouldn't be sponsored. There's enough money in the game for us to pay to have our own FA Cup. And then the Football League Cup become the Littlewood's Cup and this cup and that cup and every cup but the Egg Cup.
Yeah.
But it's it's just money is just the ruination of everything bad in football.
Absolutely, and it was 50 years this May when Bob Stokoe and Sunderland won the FA Cup at Wembley. Happy days. Malcolm was telling me.
They'll raise a glass, won't they? The Sunderland fans will raise a glass.
They don't need
great.
many excuses to raise a glass, do they, them Geordies?
Well, again, it's money again, and I mean, two of the great clubs in this country.
Absolutely.
I remember I played in my first under-23 international at Roker Park. It got snowed off. I remember my first game at Newcastle, and mate, it was electric. It was unbelievable. It was fantastic. It just so inspirational. As a younger 18-year-old, I thought you could smell it in the air. It's around the ground, and it was a packed house. You couldn't get any more people in the ground. It was just going to the game, and the adrenaline, and everything was all about it. Everything is all about what this World Cup is not.
Yeah.
It's for a kid going up to Newcastle, I'm so delighted that the only thing is that the Newcastle Stadium, all these stadiums are pretty, but they're not like the old stadiums, are they? Give me Highbury any time for you Arsenal fans, and the old St James's Park was, when it was full up, you could hear the real roar of the crowd,
And 50 years ago as well, in '73, when Sunderland did win that cup, as we've alluded to, I think they played Queen's Park Rangers. It must have been the last game of the season because the FA Cup was on a plinth. And you mentioned your mate Don Shanks. I think Don bet Stan that he could knock the FA Cup off its plinth, and he did, didn't he?
Well, in them days, Stan could knock anything over with that left foot of his, and Don would bet on anything that he could knock that left foot off with. Yeah, they were the two great characters at QPR, and they're still spoken of. And they even I watched the game, bits of it yesterday, and it said the Stanley Bowl stand, which is quite a shame, The Stan Bowles, they should have named that Stan Bowles stand the day they signed him, not when he got this terrible illness. But I can't, I look at things personally. I don't want anything named after me. Not that it will be. They'll probably name a pub after me, I suppose. But that's all right. I wouldn't mind that because the people that go in the pub will have a good time. Uh, and it won't be for a World Cup in Qatar, I can promise you, because if they had the Alan Hudson arms, it won't be a World Cup from the Qatar. It will be racing from somewhere or other. There won't be no World Cup in Qatar. It's amazing that the lack of interest, even walking in the pubs. There's no signs of the World Cup. There's nothing about the World Cup. It's extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary.
It is. I don't know whether it's us getting older or
No,
it's
it's not
just
that.
getting watered down now. But we remember 50 years ago things that happened, World Cups, cup games, etc., etc. I can't remember anything that happened last year these days because you're right, football isn't the same as what it was when it meant so much to so many. It just means nothing to the few of us that remember those golden days of football.
I agree. I agree. I mean, they were, when I hate it when people say you live in the past and all that, because I'm afraid the present don't live anywhere near it,
No,
this is all festered up into what we're going to see in the next month. Anyone that's getting excited about the World Cup, I can imagine it can only be the kids,
yeah,
but it's even going
absolutely,
to ruin it. It's going to ruin it for the kids because it's going to ruin their Christmas.
absolutely. And on that note, sir, I will love you and leave you. Thank you so much for your time again,
Yeah,
Al.
I got warm up for the game, Paul.
Alan, you would still be in my starting 11, mate, because you were one of the greatest football players ever to grace a pitch and wear a kit. What a shame that the England manager could never see the midfield trio of Alan Ball, Tony Curry, and Alan Hudson. We wouldn't have just qualified for the World Cup, mate. We would have won the World Cup and we would have been crowing every year ever since.
Well, I don't think we'd have won it in Qatar, me, Alan Ball, and Tony Curry. We'd have been playing. In fact, I see Tony Curry on Facebook playing the guitar the other day, a plastic guitar. I don't know whether he was promoting the World Cup.
I don't know what he was doing. He was probably having a little bit of a sing-song and a reminisce about those golden days, because those were the days, my friend.
Yeah, but I'm afraid they've come to an end, mate.
They have, but we keep them alive, Al, because we keep talking about them and we have so many happy memories. I hope that the kids have the happy memories that we did, but I don't think they will because it ain't the same as it used to be. Cheers, pal.
No, when they're 50, they'll be talking about the World Cup in Qatar, and I can't see that as a good thing.
Absolutely, Al. We'll reconvene next week. Another topics of the week. Until then, Al, speak soon.
All right, mate. Cheers, Paul.
Enjoy your day. Finally, have we got any predictions? Chelsea versus Arsenal?
No, I think it's one of them where both teams, it's a big test for both managers. Arsenal have promised so much this season. Can they maintain it? This is going to be their toughest test to date. Chelsea are stuttering under a manager I thought would, freshen things up and make them, it's amazing that, Brighton, his whole team beat them 4-1 last week. It's just amazing. Just goes how good a manager he is. He's left a better football team, probably a better football team technically behind him, So it's today's going to be one hell of a test for both teams. Someone said to me last night they're going to bet the draw, and I don't think they're far off, because
I fancy you, Desmond.
yeah. Oh, it was you, was it?
And you did mention you was warming up, but if you was warming up, who would you playing for, Chelsea or Arsenal?
Well, no, I'm
Fulham.
My allegiance is. I would play for Arsenal if they brought Terry Neal back. Or dug my old friend up, as I say.
Absolutely. Catch you later, Al. Enjoy the day and enjoy the game.
All right, pal, and you.
Cheers, mate. Ta-ra, mate. Bye-bye.
Have a good one. Bye. Bye.
Cheers.